All right, everyone, ready to dive in. Today we're looking at a case that's truly the stuff of nightmares. The Golden State Killer.
Definite one for the books.
For those unfamiliar, imagine California, late 70s, early 80s.
Sunshine and serial killers.
Sadly, yeah. A wave of horrifying crimes, break-ins, families terrorized in their homes. This guy was the boogeyman everyone feared.
And for over a decade, nobody knew who he was, right? Talk about evading justice.
It's chilling how long he was able to operate. That's kind of our mission today, isn't it? To figure out how he stayed hidden and what ultimately brought him down.
Absolutely. The Golden State Killer case was a turning point, not just in how we catch criminals, but in the whole debate about technology and privacy.
Exactly. But first, we got to understand the terror this guy inflicted. We're talking over 50 rapes, 12 murders, all with a similar terrifying MO.
Right, the hallmarks of his crimes.
This wasn't some random act. He meticulously planned these attacks. He often targeted families in their homes, used bindings, and stole personal items.
Speaking to a level of premeditation that is just bone-chilling. And think about the victims. The terror of being surprised in your own home, the feeling of utter vulnerability.
I can't even imagine.
The impact of these crimes on the communities, it was devastating. Widespread fear, distrust, and the trauma it lingered on victims, families, entire communities. This guy cast a long shadow.
Absolutely. He held entire communities hostage to fear for over a decade. Talk about a reign of terror. It wasn't until, get this, 2018 that the case took a dramatic turn.
Yeah, with a little help from the world of genealogy.
Okay, so we all know about those ancestry websites, right? But how do you go from, who are my great-grandparents, to, we found the Golden State Killer?
Right. It all boils down to DNA, the blueprint of life. You see, investigators had a DNA profile from the crime scenes. They just didn't know whose it was. Then they got this, genius, but also kind of controversial idea. They uploaded the crime scene DNA profile to one of these public genealogy databases. You know, the ones where people willingly submit their DNA to learn about their family history.
So they're basically looking for a long-lost cousin of the killer or something.
Exactly. And believe it or not, they got a hit. Not a perfect match, but a partial one, pointing to a distant relative of our guy.
No way. So then what? Did they just start calling up everyone in this family tree?
Well, not quite. It was still painstaking work. Investigators had to build out this massive family tree using the DNA as a starting point, but then digging through public records, historical data, even obituaries to narrow down the possibilities.
Talk about a needle in a haystack.
Totally. But they were determined.
Yeah.
And eventually, all those branches led them to a name, Joseph James DeAngelo.
But Joseph James DeAngelo, the name synonymous with terror for all those years.
And the crazy thing is, he was just living a normal life. He had been a cop, for crying out loud. The guy was hiding in plain sight.
Unbelievable.
But in 2018, the gig was up. Authorities apprehended DeAngelo, and after decades, the families finally had answers.
Answers, justice, but also, I imagine, a whole lot of conflicting emotions. Relief, sure, but also probably the resurfacing of a lot of old trauma.
Absolutely, and that's what's so important to remember about this case. It's not just a victory for forensic science. It's a stark reminder of the very human cost of these crimes, the scars they leave behind.
So true. But on the science side, this case really threw open the doors for genetic genealogy as an investigative tool. What are your thoughts on that? Amazing breakthrough or a giant can of ethical worms?
Right, it's both. On the one hand, it's incredible, solving cold cases, bringing closure to families, all thanks to a little spit and some clever algorithms. But on the other hand, are we comfortable with our DNA being used this way? What about our privacy? Where do we draw the line?
Seriously. It's a Pandora's box. Today it's catching criminals, which, hard to argue with that. But tomorrow, who knows? It's a brave new world out there, and the Golden State Killer case, it really threw a spotlight on these issues.
It really did. And I think it's a conversation we're going to be having for a long, long time.
Absolutely. Well, folks, there you have it. The chilling story of the Golden State Killer. A case that reminds us that even in the darkest corners, justice, sometimes, has a way of finding its way back to the light, even if it takes a few decades.